Internet Principles of Operation. We are going to see about web browser and internet server. A web browser is a software used to access and view web pages. We have many examples of web browsers. We are going to see the most popular ones: Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, Opera, Microsoft Edge, Mozilla Firefox, Netscape, Safari, and UC Browser. There are many examples of web browsers. These are just some examples. Most web browsers share the following features. They have a home page. They have the ability to store a user's favorite websites and web pages. They keep a history of the websites visited by the user. And they give the ability to go backwards and forward to opened websites. Now we are going to see at web browser. Web browsers allow a user to search for and view various kinds of information on the web, such as websites, video, audio, etc. The web browser running on a client device, such as a PC, communicates to a web server on a remote server device via the Internet or World Wide Web using the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is also known as HTTP. So first the client sends a request, then when the server receives it, it processes the request, so it processes it, and then sends back a response. The web browser will then interpret or translate the HTML code from the website and show the result of the translation. So the role of a web browser, as you can see, we have the web browser here, which is either on your mobile phone or on your laptop or your computer, your PC. We have the internet and we have the web server. So what will happen when the client, that is when the customer or when the sender is searching for an information, what will happen? So when the client is requesting for a web page, it will go through the internet and it will go to the web server. And when the web server will receive the request, what will happen? They will process it and then they will send back the web page or HTML file that they have asked for. As you can see, the request will go through the internet to the web server, and when it goes back, it will go again through the internet and it will go to the web browser, that is the customer or the client computer. So web server. A web server is a computer that delivers web pages requested by users. The web browser translates the web server name into an IP address, which is part of the URL. The HTML code is returned and is shown as a correctly formatted page on the computer screen. It is also possible that cookies may be sent from the web browser to the web server when the code is executed. Each web page has a unique address called a Uniform Resource Locator, also known as URL, which tells the browser where to locate the document. Uniform Resource Locator (URL). A URL consists of a protocol, a domain name, and sometimes the path to a specific web page or location on a web page. So here we have a URL, which is http://www.yahoo.com/computer-science/data-communications/url.htm. So here you will see that in terms, what is a protocol here? So the protocol is HTTP, or you can say http://. So HTTP, as we saw before, it's Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This is a protocol. Then in terms of domain name, we have here www.yahoo.com. This is a domain name. In terms of path, we have computer science/data communications and so on. So these are the parts of a URL. We have the protocol, the domain name, and the path. That is, the protocol being the HTTP, the domain name www.yahoo.com. If it was another site, for example Google, it will be www.google.com, and so on. And the path, whatever comes afterwards. So the HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So what does it do? It enables the transfer of web pages across the internet. Internet Service Provider. The Internet Service Provider, also known as ISP, is a company that provides the user with access to the internet. A monthly fee is usually charged for this service. So now we are going to see how the Internet Service Provider connects your home to the internet. So normally your laptop will be connected either through the phone line or the modem or router. And the modem or router and or the phone line will be provided to you by the Internet Service Provider, to which you have to pay bills. Normally it is every month. And then the service provider will provide you with the internet. So the ISP will set up a user account which will contain a username and a password. HTTP and HTML. The World Wide Web, WWW, is composed primarily of HTML, which is a hypertext markup language documents transmitted from the internet servers to the web browsers using the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTTP. Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTTP. Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTTP, is a set of rules that must be obeyed when transferring files across the internet. When some form of security is used, then the HTTP changes to HTTPS. You also often see the padlock sign in the status bar. The letter S after HTTP refers to secure. So when you use HTTPS, any data you send or receive from the web server is encrypted. For example, when banking online, HTTPS is used to keep your account details safe. Hypertext Markup Language, also known as HTML. So when you access the internet through your web browser, you get a lot of web pages when you're searching for information. So each web page is an individual document written using HTML tags. What is HTML? It is a set of special codes that describes what information appears on a web page, how it appears on the page, like the formatting, and any links to other pages or sites. So the links is also called a hyperlink. It is a built-in connection to another related web page or part of a web page. HTML can be written in a specialist software or in a simple text editor like Notepad. As long as a document is saved with the file extension .html, it can be opened and viewed as a web page from a browser. The example of HTML code below displays a message on a web page. So we have the HTML tags, the body tags, and then here we have the message, which is hello world, in between the heading tag, and we have the other message, which is this is my first web page, in between the paragraph tag. So you need to be familiar with how hypertext markup language, that is HTML, is used to create web pages. HTML files should always start with the following line of code, which is doctype HTML. So what does this do? This lets the browser software know the version of HTML it is about to find in the file. It should come before the opening HTML tag. So the tags are then used to define different sections of HTML code and add content. So tags starts like this. We have the tag name and it ends like this, although some can self-close. So as you can see here, the difference between the tags is a slash in the end tag as highlighted. Examples of tags used to create web pages. So we will see that HTML tags and a small description on it. The first one, we have the HTML tags. What does it do? It indicates the opening and closing tags of an HTML file. It tells the browser the rest of the document contains HTML tags. We have the head, that is, it includes all information about the page itself as well as links. The data held within the head section is not seen by the user when the web page loads. So we have also the title. The title states the title of the web page. The title will appear as text on the browser's Windows tab. We have the body, which states where the actual content of the page begins and ends, and here the content is entered. We have the P, which stands for paragraph, so it states where a new paragraph of text begin and end. We have this, it is a header. That is, it creates headings such as the main title shown on the page. There are 6 different sizes that can be used, with header 1, H1 being the largest, and we have H6 the smallest. So we have H1, H2, H3, H4, H5 and H6. H1 being the largest to H6 being the smallest. We have also B, which stands for bold, so it creates a bold-faced text. We have I for italic, so it creates italic text. So the last one is how to create a hyperlink. So here's an example of HTML codes. As you can see, it starts with doctype HTML. Then we have HTML tags. As you can see, we have an opening tag and closing tag. So for each of the tags, as you can see, we will have an opening and closing tag, like for head, for title, for body, and so on. As you can see, we have our message, which is in between the header 1 tag and the paragraph tags. So how the message will appear? It will appear like this. This is the italic heading. As you can see, the word italic is in italics. So as you can see as highlighted in the HTML code, because it is between the italic tags, the word has become italic. And for the underlined paragraph, as you can see, the underlined word is underlined in the body. As you can see highlighted, the underlined word has been put inside the underlined tag. That's why it is underlined. So features of a web page. A web page is viewed as a combination of the following features. Number 1 is structure. It refers to the essential part of the HTML document. It conveys the meaning and describes how blocks of information are structured to one another. For example, below is a visualization of an HTML page structure. We have the HTML, then we have the body, and we have the message inside the body tag. Second one, presentation. It is a style of the document and it refers to anything related to how the content and structure is presented. For example, we have the size, the color, the margins, the borders, layout, location, and multimedia elements. The third one is behavior, also known as interactivity, which refers to the employment of client-side scripts, for example JavaScript, to create interactivity between the web page and its users. HTML structure and presentation. The structure and the presentation features must be kept separate throughout the design of a web page. At the end of the design process, the author should have an HTML document which contains the structure and the actual content, and a separate CSS, which is a Cascading Style Sheet file. So as you can see, we have the structure, which is HTML. It is divided into presentation, which is a CSS, and behavior, which is JavaScript. So the CSS file will contain everything to control the actual presentation of the web page. Cascading Style Sheet, CSS. A cascading style sheet, CSS, is simply referred to as a style sheet. It is a separate document that contains all the information about style for your website. The main reason for using a style sheet is because it saves time. You might finish your website and decide that you don't like the font. If you don't have a style sheet, you would have to change the font for each paragraph of text. So with a style sheet, you only have to make the change once, save your changes, and then refresh your browser and all the text will change. While HTML tells the browser what to display on a page, CSS tells the browser how to display it. The CSS consists of a selector and the declaration blocks. Properties of CSS Style Key. So here's a line of code for CSS. As you can see, we have the selector and the declaration. So some key points here. The selector points to the HTML element you want to style. In the case above, the style will be applied to a heading. The declaration blocks, on the other hand, it contains one or more declarations separated by semicolons. Each declaration includes a property name and a value, separated by a colon, and the entire group of declarations is surrounded by curly brackets. Use of cascading style sheet. So we are going to look at the codes without CSS and the codes with CSS. So as you can see, we have two blocks of code with and without CSS. So what changed here, as you can see, is the font color. As you can see, there is a difference between the one that when you write with HTML and the one that you write with CSS. So this will produce the following output, that is hello world. So as you can see, both will produce the same thing, but one has been using HTML codes to write it and the other one has been using CSS codes. So let's do a small practical on HTML. First, we'll open Notepad. So we'll begin with doc type HTML. And we'll continue to write the remaining codes, that is HTML and so on. So after writing the codes, as you can see here, you can see my opening tag for HTML, my closing tag for HTML, my opening and closing tag for header, my title here. When I finish typing the codes, I will save the file. So I will say File, Save As. So here I'm saving the file in a folder on desktop called HTML. Here, when I will save the file, what I will do, I will save the file as example. And you will see that I will put .html at the end, as you can see here. Then I click on Save. So when I open the folder where the file is saved in, as you can see here, this is a notepad that I just created. As you can see, it is open in a browser. This is Microsoft Edge logo. When you access the file, you will see your default browser's logo that will appear. And when I open the file that is example, you will see that this appears. So the title here, My Computer Science Example. This is italic heading. As you can see, there should be a space here. So I will add the space and I will save it, and if I refresh it here, you will see that it has changed. So we can do it side by side. We can do other examples also. For example, now if I want to change the title here, as you can see, My Computer Example, I want to change it to My Example Only. Let's say like this. I should save it first, then I click refresh here, you will see that it has changed to My Example. If I want to add another header, for example, I can add it. As we have said before, we have header 2, header 3, header 4, and so on. So my opening tag for header 2, my closing tag for header 2 here. So I will remove this part because I don't want anything in italic. So this is heading 2, let's say this. So you will see that the HTML codes has been aligned. As you can see, HTML has been aligned with this one, with the closing tag for HTML. The head has been aligned with the closing tag, even the body, and so on. So I will click on File, Save, and if I refresh it, you will see that this is heading 2 will appear here. Now, if I want to do all the headers, let's erase this part. I will do header 1 and all the remaining headers. So header 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So let's say we are going to do header 1 to 6. So header 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So here I have put the different headers, for example. If I refresh it without saving, you will see that nothing will change. So if I click, I have to save it first, then I click on refresh, you will see that it has changed. So this is header 1, header 2, header 3, header 4, header 5, and header 6. You can do many other things on HTML. If you want to practice more, there is a website called w3school.com where you can go. So here is the link for it. So as you can see, there is a lot of things that you can learn from HTML, CSS, JavaScript, SQL, Python, and so on. It explains detail by detail about everything. So HTML by alphabet and so on. So if you want to practice more on HTML, you can go to this website, so w3schools.com. The structure of the Internet. Every device on the Internet has a unique IP address. The IP address is included in a data packet. IP addresses are either 32-bit or 128-bit numbers. The address is broken down into 4 8-bit numbers, and each is called an octet. Each octet can represent a number between 0 and 255 and is separated by a full stop. For example, we have 192.168.0.12. To find your IP address, you can use the ipconfig command line tool. So here are some key points on how you can find your IP address by using Windows OS. So you go to the Start menu and type command in the box. Then right-click on the command prompt and click Run as Administrator. If a user's account control window pops up, click Continue. At the prompt, now you type ipconfig. Then press Enter. Your IP address, subnet mask, and default gateway will be returned to you. MAC address. All devices on a network have a media access control address, better known as MAC address. The MAC address is different from the IP address as it identifies a device connected to the Internet, whereas the IP address gives the location of a device on the Internet. On a computer, the MAC address is a unique code built into a network interface card, also known as NIC. So no two computers have the same MAC address. A MAC address is made up of 48 bits or 64 bits of data, usually written as 12 hexadecimal characters. And the Wi-Fi MAC address on my phone, for example, is, as you can see, 00:2D:56:56:12:78. By convention, MAC addresses are usually written in one of the following two formats. The first half of a MAC address, that is mm:/mm:/mm, it contains the ID of the adapter's manufacturer, that is the manufacturer's ID, and these IDs are regulated by the Internet Standard Body. The second half of the MAC address, that is SS:/SS:/SS, it represents the serial number or the serial ID of the device. In the example here, we have the prefix 00A0C9. It indicates the manufacturer is Intel Corporation. Domain Name System, DNS. It's like your computer GPS for the Internet. Its basic job is to turn a user-friendly domain name like google.com into an Internet Protocol address, that is IP address, like 64.233.167.104 that computers use to identify each other on the network. Computers and other network devices on the Internet use an IP address to route your request to the site you're trying to reach. This is similar to dialing a phone number to connect to the person you're trying to call. Thanks to DNS, though you don't have to keep your own address book of IP addresses, instead you just connect through a domain name server, also called a DNS server or name server, which manages a massive database that maps domain names to IP addresses. How domain name system works: as you can see, you have your laptop and the web server. Of course, you need the DNS server. So first, I will have to request a website. So here I need directions to http://www.yahoo.com, and the request will go to the DNS server. The DNS server will try to look for this particular address. So now what will happen if the DNS cannot find the address? The domain name www.yahoo.com is not in my database or cache. I'll try another DNS server, so it will try to look it in another DNS server. So the request goes to the other DNS server and it will try to look for it in its database or cache. In the other DNS server, the address is in its cache, so it maps to the IP address 80.22.261.42. Then what will happen? It will return the request to the DNS server which has sent the request first. So great. The DNS server will reply, great, I'll cache that for a while in case I get more requests. And then the DNS server will send the request back to the web browser. That is, it will say thanks for the directions. Now to find lots of great information. So it has the IP address. So now what the web browser will do, it will via the IP address contact the web server. So this is how the domain name system works. Internet Protocol IP address. Every machine on a network has a unique identifier. Just as you would address a letter to send in the mail, computers use a unique identifier to send address to a specific computers on a network. Most networks today, including all computers on the internet, use the TCP/IP protocol as a standard for communicating on the network. In the TCP/IP protocol, the unique identifier for a computer is called its IP address. There are two standards for IP addresses. The first one, we have IP version 4, also known as IPv4, and IP version 6, also known as IPv6. All computers with IP addresses have an IPv4 address, and many are starting to use a new IPv6 address system as well. Here's what these two address types means. IPv4 uses 32 bits to create a single unique address on the network. An IPv4 address is expressed by 4 numbers separated by dots. Each number is the decimal, that is base 10 representation for an 8-digit binary, base 2 number, also called an octet. For example, we have 216.27.61.137. So this is an example of IPv4 address. IPv6 now, it uses a 128 binary bits to create a single unique address on the network. An IPv6 address is expressed by 8 groups of hexadecimal, that is base 16 numbers separated by colons. For example, we have 2001:0000:0000:0000:8A2E:037:0:7334. So this is an example of an IPv6 address. So groups of numbers that contains all zeros are often omitted to save space, leaving a colon separated to mark the gap. For example, the IPv6 example above, it can also be written as 2001:8A2E:370:7334. MAC address versus IP addressing. So MAC address generally remains fixed and follows the network device. But the IP address changes as the network device moves from one network to another. So IP networks maintain a mapping between the IP address of the device and its MAC address.